This story recounts how a boy entered a completely different and unknown world. A place without psychological and physical boundaries, was inhabited by a large number of dangerous monsters and constellations, which one must fight to survive. When Choi Yansung arrived in this world, not a single day passed without him battling various creatures. Visually, it seemed he didn't stand a chance against such monsters, but in reality, that wasn't the case. He was unlike the others. He was highly skilled in martial arts and wielded magic effectively. While facing a seven-headed dragon, another monster appeared behind him, a colossal planet-eating bear named Vulcan. These powerful monsters ruled their territories and guarded them fiercely. It was exceedingly rare to encounter two such creatures simultaneously, but this time, there was just such an occurrence. This wasn't the last surprise for Choi Yansung. He was caught in a web trap, presenting another challenge. A spider appeared, the master of the spatial cave, known as Audio. Yet, Yansung's face showed no anxiety or fear. For him, it was merely another form of entertainment. Yansung's strength meant he didn't worry about the fight's outcome. It felt to him as though this battle had spanned about 300 years. Of course, it would have been easier to deal with them one by one. The huge and powerful monsters were slain, but Yansung lost a lot of time. He wanted to quickly find a way back to Earth. He succeeded and earned the title of Invincible Training Master. His presence became more pronounced in this world, and as a constellation, he grew much stronger. When Earth first connected to the abyss, humanity learned that mythology wasn't merely a figment of the imagination. The creatures, known as constellations, were the closest beings to what people considered deities. They blessed their descendants, and the more descendants they had, the greater their authority grew. The land, with nearly 10 billion souls, was like a golden vein for the constellations that vied to take each other's offspring. Among them were more hypocritical creatures, those who sought to seize the land not with blessings but with sheer force. And it was this constellation that appeared to halt the chaos in the abyss. After the battle, young constellation Choi Yansung decided to grill a steak to restore his spent strength. A goblin approached him, inquiring about the contents of his pan. Choi Yansung replied that it was meat. The goblin was astounded that Choi Yansung was calmly cooking the meat of a bear that had devoured planets before. It was the ruler of the Goblin Kingdom. He noticed that the oil Yansung used had a very high concentration of magical power. Choi Yansung mentioned that he had fought with another constellation resembling a cow and had let it go in exchange for milk. The goblin was surprised that he had contended with a constellation, but Yansung explained that he really wanted to eat them. Therefore, his highest priority was gathering ingredients, as his hobby for thousands of years in the abyss had been cooking. He decided to indulge himself and eat meat for the first time in 300 years. The utensils with which Yansung ate possessed a very valuable property. When they touched food, they automatically made it fresh. The goblin was shocked that Yansung had defeated the constellation, but, instead of claiming the territories, had taken the milk. As Yansung savored the meat, the goblin pondered the fact that his master was categorically different from the other constellations. The goblin was timid but still dared to ask for a taste of the delicious meat dish. He put an entire fried steak in his mouth, but it had a very strange effect on his body, and the goblin began to emit a glow from all his orifices. The power of adamantium preserved the umami in the meat, thanks to the magical power from the oil of the mystical constellation. The meat rose to a high level, and the goblin's magic circle was activated. A new circle of mana opened up within him. The goblin looked as if he had tasted the best meal of his life. Yansung watched what was happening, now even more convinced that he did not understand goblins and their behavior at all. He began to reminisce about his past life, and he yearned to return. Let's go back to the unknown past, before he became an invincible master of training. Yansung was an ordinary person who played sports as his hobby. The teachers couldn't make him attend classes as scheduled because he spent almost all his time in the gym. Everyone wondered why he trained so often. Obsessed with strength from an early age, he attempted to train several times a day. As an orphan with no one to turn to for help, he realized he needed to train to protect himself in this world. The guy was an C+ rank hunter, a new profession that arose in the age of the abyss, a very respectable one where they protect people from the dangers of dungeons and monsters. Cores and items that drop after killing monsters are highly valued. Artifacts from dungeons attract the attention of many who seek fame and money. With nothing to lose, Choi Yansung became a hunter. Once, while working out in the gym, his team leader approached him. He asked Yansung to calm down a bit and advised that going to AB-rank dungeon was not wise. The teacher explained that they were barely clearing C-rank dungeons, and even there, hunters were losing partners. That's why one shouldn't even consider the B rank. The skills, magic, martial arts, and artifacts that drop in dungeons are great, but even with those, humans are very weak compared to monsters. The teacher inquired why Yansung was so indifferent to his life and asked him to think at least about his girlfriend, but they had broken up. Yansung had told her that he couldn't go on a date because he had training, and as a result, she suggested he meet with monsters instead. Everything ended peacefully and without arguments. The leader realized that this boy was hopeless. He only needed a gym. A powerful explosion occurred in the next dungeon. Yansung went hunting again, but this did not deter the monster from heading straight for him. The strength that Yansung had achieved through training helped him destroy enemies during such forays. While he fought the monsters, the rest of the team discussed how martial artists don't have it easy. They're tough, and that's why they make good tanks, though their damage is no match for wizards. They were curious why he decided to become a master of martial arts. One of Yansung's teammate replied that during the farm, a scroll of martial arts had dropped, but since everyone was interested only in magic, it became unnecessary. That's when Yansung decided to start studying IT. It didn't matter what others said about him, because he didn't regret starting to study martial arts. Martial arts are not as flashy as magic, but the true nature of martial arts, in which one receives as much as one trains, suited Yansung's outlook and temperament. In addition, he never canceled his desire to achieve more. He reached the rank of C+ through rigorous training, but there were several masters who had become stronger than him. He believed that he needed to practice even more and much more often. Yansung even used his sleep to train, learning various techniques in his dreams. He utilized lucid dreams for this, considering it a form of spiritual training that influenced his progress. During another such training session, a very bright light appeared before him, filling the entire space. It was the constellation of the abyss, and she was the benevolent goddess of Libra. For the first time in a long while, Yansung was truly worried and shocked. She understood his reaction, but they had little time before the goddess got straight down to business. The girl offered him a deal. She was prepared for him to ask many questions, but Yansung answered without hesitation that he accepted her offer. This confused the goddess, and she wondered if he really didn't want to ask her anything. But Yansung was interested in only one thing: whether he would become stronger thanks to this agreement. Although it was a simple question, the goddess didn't know how to answer it. After a while, she was still able to confirm that it would make him stronger. He smiled and said that was enough for him. Yansung asked why she chose him when there were many hunters with higher ratings and more fame. But it didn't matter to her because, as the benevolent Libra goddess, she had the ability to see the future. She began to explain that in a few years, a great danger would descend on Earth. Evil creatures would attack in full force, and when that day came, peaceful life would be destroyed forever. They would realize that the monsters and dungeons they had cleared earlier were just the beginning. She saw that Yansung was the key to preventing such a future. She promised to make him stronger through long and difficult training that would be unlike any human training. At that moment, the goddess was very upset because no reasonable being would agree to sign a contract under such terms. If a hunter makes a contract with a constellation, he becomes an avatar, something very complicated and immortal. His soul, attached to the constellation, would have to live with constant restrictions. All he had to do was make a decision. Mighty power and magic would appear immediately after signing the contract, with a guaranteed rank increase. The constellations were very impatient because they had to compete to get an avatar. From the expression on Yansung's face, you could see that he was very pleased with the offer. Yansung asked what kind of training the goddess had prepared for him. She had prepared a training facility for him in the abyss, and warned him that time in the abyss and on Earth runs differently. He would have to train alone for several tens of years, or even hundreds, and even if he refused during training, he still wouldn't be able to come back. Yansung was scared. It didn't look like training but more like a test. But then he realized that this was exactly how those hunters became stronger. They signed contracts with the constellations. It would be quite illogical if they became stronger just like that. He thought that the other avatars were also going through this, but he was wrong because they had already become stronger when they made the contract. The goddess understood that this was a more difficult decision than she had anticipated, and she demanded a lot from an ordinary person. She wanted to give him a week to think and give her an answer, but Yansung raised his head and said that he agreed to all the conditions. The girl thought that he did not understand what he was agreeing to, so she suggested he take more time. But Yansung replied that he was not as attached to this world as the others. The only thing he wanted was to send one letter, and if he could become stronger, then as a bonus, he could save the world. She was very worried because of rumors that people on Earth are greedy and foolish. She was very happy that this time her prophecy came true. The goddess began to perform the ritual, and Yansung did not have time to ask why she had been wrong earlier. She no longer heard what Yansung was saying and began to activate the contract so that he could begin his journey. The goddess asked him to simply think about the letter he wanted to send, and she, thanks to her power, would leave it where he needed it. She earnestly wanted him to pass this test and then accept him as her avatar. Yansung touched the portal, and it began to warp. After that, the portal looked at him completely, ready to move him to the right place. The letter he was talking about appeared in the gym near the barbell. He teleported to the place where he would spend the next several hundred years. When he came, he felt that there was a completely different concentration of magic. This abyss looked like an ordinary S-level dungeon. The scientists on Earth thought that the dungeon was a part of the abyss that had split off, but in fact, there was absolutely nothing there. Perhaps it was a training facility. So, Yansung decided he didn't need to waste time and started training. The goddess hoped that this time she had interrupted the vision in time. This guy was a really good avatar candidate. Although the goddess of scales could see the future, her skills were not perfect. She could only see part of it, and the rest was guesswork and theory. The first thing she saw in the future was how Yansung was training in the abyss. The second was how he suppressed the invasion of evil constellations. She really wanted to make such a strong person her avatar. In her opinion, it was the perfect plan, and it didn't matter how long it would take. The other goddesses began to worry even more when she was so confident. They had a bad feeling. She only had to wait for him to arrive for training. She had already prepared everything, even the toys. But the most important thing was a safe place in the abyss. While Yansung was trying to train, he noticed something strange nearby. It looked very dangerous, and he thought that this was the first test from the goddess. He believed that it was impossible to become stronger and always be safe. If this test was really prepared by the goddess, then there was definitely a meaning in it. He had a feeling as if his body was tearing apart, but he had to endure it. You can become stronger only by overcoming pain and difficulties. This is the idea of the universe. After a powerful magical storm swept through, the illusion magic that covered the goddess's territory dissipated. But before Yansung could understand it, the magical storm started again.